So good morning or good afternoon to everybody. I'm very happy that we're today all together, and this is the 5th year that we're hosting the Dorothy Waxman International Textile Design Prize, which is a very long title for a very prestigious, humble award. This is a prize that we started a few years ago when we wanted to continue our work with Talking Textiles, which is a program which travels around the world with exhibitions and conferences and a magazine, and also now a student textile prize. The reason that we wanted to start Talking Textiles is to help continue the public's awareness as well as professionals' awareness of the importance of textile creativity. And therefore, one of the most important aspects of it is this prize that we give out once a year. As in other years, this year we had 200 applications from all around the world. By doing this prize, we've been introduced to schools that we've even never heard of before. They can come from Nova Scotia or New Zealand or any corner of the world. So we're very happy that this prize through the internet and through the awareness of it has actually reached many people. The prize money is generously given to us from MOHAWK Industries, MOHAWK Group, which is one of the world's leaders in flooring and textiles. And Royce Epstein from MOHAWK is one of the jury members today. You're going to be speaking or hearing from her later on, I'm sure. And last but not least, I wanted to mention Dorothy, who's with us. I see her in pink. Dorothy is the person after whom this prize is named, mainly because she is the most inspiring textile lover we know. She is a remarkable spirit in our lives, and she has founded our company, which is a trend forecasting company in the United States many decades ago. And apart from that, Dorothy has always been incredibly curious about textiles. So she's been traveling around the world like an adventurer, always trying to uncover the latest thing, whether it's in textiles or in design or fashion or anything at all. Dorothy has always been at the forefront of innovation and fashionability. So it's with great pleasure that we continue this prize in her name, because we hope that as a role model to us, the winners of this prize are also going to be role models in the textile industry. We have given away this prize 4 times before, I believe, maybe even 5, if my memory is wrong. And each time, what's interesting is that even though one person does win the prize and they get $5,000 US, with that money, they're able to do things like buy an interesting sewing machine or move to Los Angeles or go on a trip around the world before COVID, or do whatever they want with it, as long as it advances their curiosity and creativity. So before I pass it back on to Ragnar, who has very kindly coordinated all of this, which is a mammoth task with 200 applications and sorting through all of it to get us down to the finalists, who you're all present today. I just wanted to mention that from previous years' experiences, it actually doesn't matter if you win the prize or not, because it's actually just great that everybody has recognition to become a finalist. And all of the students who have been finalists have always been happy for the person that wins, because they're already very, I would say, honored and happy that their work, which is a lot of hard work from their studies, has been recognized in this way. So first of all, before we even start the presentations, I just wanted to say congratulations to all of the finalists, because you are the, what is it, Ragnar, 15 or is it 15 finalists?
20 finalists.
20, okay, yeah. 20. So the 20 finalists out of the creme de la creme of this year's Best Textile Talent, which comes from all around the world. And I'm very excited to hear all of your presentations today. And I'm not on the jury, but I will check on the jury later on. So Thank you, Ragnar, for organizing this, and thank you, Dorothy, for your inspiration. And thank you also to all of the jury members who I see on the screen. And thank you for your contributions today as well. Back to you, Ragnar.
Yes, thank you, Philip, and welcome everyone to this very interesting event. I'm so much looking forward to see the works of all of you students and finalists. And thank you, jury, for being here with us. Jessica Hemmings from the Gothenburg University and Susan Brown from Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian, and curator, and Kiva Motnik from Thompson Street Studio, and Royce Epstein from MOHAWK. Thank you, Royce, and for your support to this competition. And of course, Dorothy Waxman, who is the reason why we are doing this prize and our main inspiration. And all students, I think you're all here. We had a little bit of Zoom technical problems in the beginning, which is normal, I think, with the Zoom world we live in today. After the presentations, we will ask all the finalists to leave, and we will kind of say something in the closing, but and the jury will stay on to discuss your work for a little time. And I want to thank you all for showing up today and share with us your interesting and beautiful work. It has been so interesting to go through all the applications and see how much creativity and innovation there is in the textile education today, and it's very exciting. And I also hope that you will encourage your fellow students to participate and apply for the next year's competition, because it's important that we celebrate textiles and acknowledge the textile studies in this work. You know, it's very important. So I also want to ask you finalists to be prepared. You are, as you know, it's an alphabetical order. So just be prepared when the one before you is presenting that you are switching on to your presentation. Okay, so we'll start with Abigail and from Vysensi Academy. Abigail. And yeah.
I'll just share my screen.
Yeah.
So our project was called Microcolors. Sorry, my project partner Boram can't be with us. She's actually on a flight at the moment. But yeah, our project was called Microcolors. We wanted to see if color-fast fabric dyes could be created from pigmented microorganisms. We hope to find a solution to the current harmful dyeing and printing methods used within the industry. So we teamed up with 2 microbiology students who helped us with the science side of things. Our current dyeing process in the textile industry is linear. We take a raw material, we make products using environmentally harmful processes, and then dispose of the product at the end of the life. But Microcolors focuses on creating a circular material cycle to reduce environmental impact within the industry. So our aims were to reduce chemical impact, to reduce energy and water use, and explore cleaner and better technologies. So our first job was to find, extract, and grow the microorganisms. Pigmented microorganisms can be found on pretty much anything in the world, but some are quite dangerous, so don't try and grow any at home. So these are the organisms we used. Our rubra was the pink yeast, which the lab provided. The blue one is L. casei, and it's a bacteria, and M. luteus was the yellow one and from soil samples. The blue one, sorry, was from yogurt. So it is one type of microbe from a sample. We were in the lab a lot and tried many different experiments. They all grow at different rates, temperatures, and on different agars. So it's quite complicated to keep track of all the experiments all happening at the same time. But it is also important to know that once you have extracted the pigmented microorganism you want, you can keep growing it, so you don't have to keep sourcing it again and again, unless you can't let it die. So now we have the organisms. We wanted to see if they would dye the textiles and if we could design with them. So first we wanted to see if we could get full coverage of dye on the fabric. It was unsuccessful because we didn't have enough organisms in the solution, and it was too diluted. So in our next experiment, we wanted to extract pigment from both liquid and powder form. It did work, however, in such small amounts it wouldn't have worked onto fabric. So then we realized we would need to use the microorganisms without diluting it if we wanted strong color. So we tried massaging the organisms directly onto the fabric surface. This worked well, and we got even coverage of dye and bright color. This was the result after they were sterilized. All samples must be sterilized so they're safe to touch. We tried some sun tests and tried them in the washing machine, and the color didn't fade. So we were really happy that we found that. Next, we wanted to try different dye methods to see if we could design with the microorganisms. And here are some of our results. We wanted to know if the organisms would grow a design onto the fabric surface. Here you can see I'm pipetting the organisms onto the plates with the fabric and the yarn inside. So this is what they look like in the Petri dishes after the organisms had grown onto the textiles. We tried folding the fabric, twisting it, scrunching it. The only problem with this method is we were limited to the size of the plates. Therefore couldn't make large samples. Here is the results. It does look a bit like tie-dye, but it is kind of interesting to see how the organisms grew straight onto it, but you couldn't get full coverage of dye. Next, we tried folding, twisting, scrunching, clamping, origami, and shibori techniques for larger samples, using the organisms straight from the Petri dishes. Here are some of our results. Some worked better than others, but we think the shibori was quite good. So 1 litre of dye, 1 litre of water can dye 4.6 meters squared of fabric. No chemicals, mordants, or textile treatments are used within our dyeing process. And microbial dyes have huge potential and could be the solution. If our process was scaled up to an industrial context, there is the possibility of extracting a large range of colours from locally sourced organisms. Thanks so much for listening. We're really grateful that we've been able to share our work with you. If you've got any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Abigail. Thank you, Abigail. This was great. And then we have Crystal from Crystal Whithoff Courts from the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts. Crystal, you can start sharing your screen. Thank you.
Okay, so this is my master project, and it's called Move, and it's a series of active and sculptural furniture. Don't just sit there, move. As a textile designer, I work with the design of the furniture based on a textile starting point, where the textiles not alone are adjusted to the furniture, but where the furniture is also adjusted to the selected surfaces, including the textiles. Due to industrialization and technological development, we as a society are sitting down a great deal of our everyday life, both at work and at home. This inactive lifestyle contributes to a bodily and mental imbalance. To accommodate this tendency, I want to rethink our use of living room furniture so that our static sitting behavior becomes more active and dynamic. This I want to do by activating the body through furniture that supports active relaxation and with a focus on textile and sensory stimulating qualities. I have been working with the global goal number 3, good health and well-being. So my solution proposal. And as an alternative to the conventional sofa, coffee table, and armchair, my project consists of 3 sculptural furniture designed to activate the body based on a focus on multiple sitting positions, mobility, and textile surfaces. I will now show you a series of pictures that should speak for themselves, so therefore I will be quiet for a minute, just a moment. I have been working with elements such as contrast, subtle surfaces, space, negative and positive, encounters, visual weight, light and heavy, haptic qualities, and organic structures. So my process. To investigate and confirm my claim of challenge, I made a questionnaire survey. From this, I also found out which of the home furniture we use the most, and therefore where rethinking of the furniture can make a difference. As children, we often move around a lot, but as a part of our upbringing, we are told that we must sit still and sit nicely, whereby the body's natural instinct for movement is suppressed. I have been inspired by children's playful, intuitive use of living room space and furniture, this with a desire to use their body position to shape furniture so that they activate and strengthen their adult body and mind. From the photo registration, I have selected a variety of dynamic and different position. I have used the position to the development of the shaping of the furniture, from two-dimensional lines to spatial form, where I used both analog and digital methods. With mockups 1-to-1, I have tested dimension and positions, and hereby the furniture's functional qualities. The sculptural value and tactility of the surfaces has been chosen based on their ability to stimulate the senses. Colors and textures are inspired by Faxit chalk mine, both by the peripheral monochrome landscape and by the close-up view in its flora with its wide variety of colors and textures. As an example of how I'm using the photo registration, I here show you how I use textures and movements from the first image of the water surface and the color from the second image, and use it as an inspiration in selecting my textiles.
Thank you, Crystal. So you need to wrap it up.
Okay, I've done a lot of experimenting with the surfaces. Here are some casting samples and chalk samples and tufting samples. And at last, but not least, my plan was to develop my own woven textile for the Corona lockdown. I made it the digital loom invisible, so it's merely a set of points for making a series of my own woven textile. So I'm done.
Thank you, Crystal. So now we will have Elizabeth Sandler from Parsons MFA Textiles.
Okay, thank you so much to everyone for being here. I'm Elizabeth Sandler and I go to Parsons School of Design. I'm going to talk to you about the work I did during my second semester in the MFA Textiles program at Parsons. I spent the second half of the semester working on these 4 pieces from home. The woven piece in this collection is titled Woven Record, and it was woven freely as I experienced the early days of the pandemic. I worked on the piece through my displacement from my apartment in New York, and I maintained the weaving as a diary. I started weaving on my rigid heddle loom at the same time that I started isolating in my apartment, and I took this to be a very important time for me to stay aware of how I was doing and to check in with myself on a regular basis and be sure to monitor my mental health. So I could sit down and think about what I was feeling at the moment and just work, thinking about what I wanted to hold right then and what my hands wanted to do. I let myself work with what I had available and not question it or judge it. And I didn't worry about what it would be in the end because I had this sense that there was a lot of emotion in what I was doing and I really just needed to let it out. I wanted to bring in work and materials that reflected my current state. I spun yarn from my fabric scraps and I brought that into the piece. I incorporated latch hooking and crochet embellishments using wool and silk yarns and wool roving. And I brought in yarns that I dyed and wool that I felted into all different forms. Eventually, it became too difficult for me to stay in the city in such a small space, so I ended up finishing this piece in Connecticut after moving to my mother's house. And I felt much safer there, but there was a lot of guilt and sadness I was feeling for leaving the city. So this piece became very grounding for me to come back to as a constant. Alongside my weaving, I was experimenting with natural dyes in my home using cotton, silk, and linen, and dyeing with avocado, onion skins, couch, logwood, and cochineal, and also incorporating scrap and recycled fabrics. And I created patterns using a beeswax resist and shibori folding. And the patchwork pieces in this collection I titled From Home. They're an exploration of shapes from my memory as I reflected on my personal concept of home. So in this time when so many people are displaced, I was considering my own experience of many relocations. The 3 panels depict my endeavor throughout my life and recently to build my own story and to shape my personal feeling of home wherever I go. And I was thinking a lot about the history of quilting as a means of storytelling in a resourceful and often in a codified way. And I let that help me to inform my use of story and abstraction in my work. And this work was very influenced by the scenery and by the light outside, and particularly changing from the city to the country, and thinking about how the light and the scenery would change the work, and how the light especially made it look like stained glass. Windows and looking outside were so important to me and have been throughout this isolation. With all this uncertainty and fear and tragedy that I was processing, this work became very important for me. This collection to me really represents part of what's so special about textiles, and that they can travel with a person throughout many different phases of their life. And my experience with this work particularly has taught me how textiles could be a real source of healing. Textiles can serve as records, reminders, and sources of comfort when it's so important to be caring for ourselves and feeling safe. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you for letting me share.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. Now we have Jacob Olmedo from Parsons MFA Textiles.
So today I'm presenting part of my work titled Endangered Identity, a project that focuses on my relationship with nature and land as a minority body in the United States of America. Looking at nature as a privilege to those most fortunate in the era of the climate crisis, while also looking at nature as the ultimate commonality between all people. Parts of this work look at circumstances and thoughts I have as a queer artist, as a son of a Mexican immigrant father, and as a climate activist. Building on low realities to the mecca of queer and minority agencies. And in a world of extreme time of opposition, and I think of lack of empathy, I find that the world cries out for a new future. We as humans are all connected together through collective land and plant life. And as they dwindle and change, taking care of them while also taking care of each other, and our current state become more radical of ideas and values. The part of this project I'm presenting today is titled Your Land is Our Land, a project that takes back systematically destroyed soil for new frontiers through textile making and tradition for those underrepresented. Throughout the work, I use a lot of beads, specifically seed beads and pieces for places of importance. In this case, for this piece, is the mapping of internal feelings to be externalized. Places where I'm signifying and expressing identities, and places where I'm actually handwriting statements and questions for permanence. The CB itself, for me, was a case study of also redesign for a take back of a craft in North American communities with the past of rich colonialism and a craft truly for trade. So the first part of this project is the redesign. I went through different steps. I went through a 3D rendering, a 3D printing, silicone molding, and then using different materials to actually cast beads myself. The redesign that I ended up taking was taking the seed bead shape and exporting an axis off of it to create different lengths. And then the second part of this project is the material itself. The first one I'm going to talk about is isomalt, which is a natural sugar that compounds from beets. And with heat in granule forms, isomalt melts down into clear bodies and hard bodies like a resin would. But one of the beautiful attributes of isomalt is that with water, it transforms and it dissipates. The second material is actually the seeds inside of these beads themselves. While doing research of land, I came across the destructive systems have transformed much of our healthy, robust soil into nutrient-less dirt, resulted by monoculture farming practices, lack of diverse crop rotation, use of heavy chemicals, fertilizers, tilling practices, strict use of annual crops, all systems that were also brought from colonialism. So how can we repair through non-tilling farming practices and thoughts of the plants that we grow? Straying away from annual crops, perennial crops, and their root structures allow soil to gain back bacteria and nutrients of soil that we live off of. The seeds I use for this project are all handmade with isomalt and seeds. There are a variety of perennial wheat, goldenrod, and a mix of deep grower prairie grasses. Well, also some of the beads have seeds of my own identity myself, coming from immigrant parents. And so once these beads are fabricated, they're separated in their specific heights and shapes, and a digital map is created. And in the design of the seeds, they're placed row by row. Beads are all strung in order of the digital map. And once the stringing and labeling of the rows are completed, the yarn and the beads are crocheted in a round to create armor-like garment structures. I think of these armor garment-like structures as a new future, a vision that holds the environment to its highest value, providing traditionally marginalized people to have the power to change and the way that we operate in the world. This textile I see is also a conceptual power, and through the impermanent handicraft of the beads, that all hold seeds that tell stories of migration. There are also seeds of resilience and seeds of permanence and repair. Perennial prairie seeds that can physically repair the dirt and soil all sustain communities. This textile is created of all natural materials. Wool is used as the yarn base for the object, while isomalt is a natural sugar and biomaterial. With the intention of this work, the project, the seeds, and the beads themselves are all used to grow perennial prairies. One garment equals 70 square feet of regenerative soil creation. With the water that dissipates, with the water, the beads dissipate, expelling the raw seeds to grow into the earth. And when textiles are worn on bodies like my own, underrepresented and dismissed, and historically like my ancestors given what to do instead of making up their own minds, gives me and many others the power and agency to take back our own futures. These plants and the humans would grow them, will grow together, healing our land, supplying us with tools to create nourishment, new textile making supplies, and healthy ecosystems. I'm done.
Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you.
So we have now Laura Lindsig from the University of Art and Design, Berg. Maybe Laura, you can say the name.
Yeah, I will. Right. So, yeah, hello or good morning. First of all, I would like to say that I feel very honored that I have the chance to present my work here today. My name is Laura Lindsig. I studied conceptual textile design and graduated from the University Burg Giebichenstein, Halle in Germany. Next. Okay, it doesn't.
You might need to go, might need to, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I got it. Thank you. 3 years ago, I went for a practical training to Thailand. And at that time, I was very fascinated by a special kind of textile that gathered my attention. Many people are maybe familiar with it as ikat. When I had the chance to learn this technique, I was stunned by the complexity of the planning and making process. Just for the ones who maybe don't know what an ikat is, I have a short description for you. It's a so-called tie-dye technique where parts of the yarn have to be tied by hand in order to resist it from dying. Later on, the yarn is normally woven on hand or semi-automatic looms. The yarn that has been dyed before creates a kind of blurred looking pattern while weaving. This effect basically appears because most of the process is done by hand, what to me adds another sort of vivid dimension to the fabric surface that I personally find very fascinating. Nevertheless, it's still a very time-consuming and knowledge-intensive process, what might have been a reason for the rise and success of digital printed e-cuts in the last decades. Me, myself, I can be delighted with an industry woven fabric as much as I see the beauty of a hand-woven piece. But I saw many printed examples that only tried to imitate the e-cut look and hereby often seem to lose the textile's inherent complex nature. At this point, I asked myself, how can artisan techniques and industrial processes intertwine and complement each other? And how can ancient knowledge be celebrated and applied to a contemporary context? The textiles I would like to present to you today are part of my master's project with the title Fragmented Focus, in which I tried to find a way to combine artisan and industrial textile techniques without losing its material complexity nor its narrative character. The result is a series that juxtaposes hand-tied and hand-woven ikat pieces with the jacquard weaves that have been designed for and woven with a computer-controlled loom. Both categories of fabric share a common aesthetic and similar kind of grid patterns, while the technical design is very different. Instead of using the manual technique of tie-dye, I try to bring the multidimensional appearance of a hand-woven fabric into a machine-made textile. The weave construction of the machine-woven jacquard pieces are inspired by the visual blurring effect of e-cuts, but its making method have been adapted to the requirements of an automatic jacquard loom. On this right side, you can see floats in lancé, for example, and an example of hand-woven double e-cut on the left-hand side. I chose to combine contrasting colors complemented by a blue or bluish white warp that tunes down the bold colors to a pastel tone, but at the same time increases its depth. With this work, I'm not aiming to replace elaborate artisan techniques with fast industrial manufacturing options, but would like to create material complexity and new textile narratives through rethinking conventional making processes. I think that the merging of manual and digital techniques can create sustainable textile values if long-grown artisan knowledge is respectfully quoted and further developed in an experimental and thoughtful way. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Laura. So we have now Lily Hsu from the MFA Fashion and Society program at Parsons, New York.
Okay. So I'm Lily and I'm a knitwear designer. And so my body of work is entitled On Longing. And what I want to explore is the emotions of cultural melancholia, longing and loss. And so being from Australia and raised in a culture that's different to my own heritage and that of my parents, I think I'm fascinated by immigration, the implications of having family ties that span across space and time. And I think there's something interesting and strange about this in-betweenness where one is simultaneously a part of these cultures and identities, but also very far removed. And so the textiles are based on a series of photographs of miscellaneous and unfamiliar places, objects, and people. And they were taken by my grandfather, who I did not know very well. And I think, I guess, by reinterpreting these photographs into my own textiles and work is a way of recreating these memories that don't quite exist in a garment form. And so, oh dear, there we go. So all my textiles are made by hand using a Dubia knit machine. And in creating the fabrication, I experiment with different ways of playing with color and incorporating imagery into knitwear without using traditional printing and dyeing processes. And so, for example, in this one, based off the original image, what I've done is I've printed on ribbon using just a home inkjet printer. And then the ribbon is then woven back into a knit piece that holds the whole image together. And similarly, with the knit piece with floats in it, transferring the image through sublimation and having the home inkjet printed ribbon that goes back into the textiles. Part of my process is also looking at how, I guess, part of what I was doing was projecting the images onto the body and letting the photographs and imagery inform what the silhouette could potentially be. And also looking at within the textiles, looking at the contrast between the transparency and density, looking at needle changes, and to create depth within one singular piece. Color is also a big part of my working process, and I guess I tend to use more like nostalgic and oil painterly like colors to kind of explore these intangible, like nostalgic feelings. I guess also in terms of, I developed this way of essentially painting my toiles as a way to explore color and the placement on the body and proportion. And so this is an example of a painted toile, which I then translate into a paper pattern where each of the colors sit is indicated and mapped out, which I then translate into a knit graph to then create the textiles. I guess what I'm also interested in is looking at how textiles can inform a silhouette. So for this particular sample, looking at how drape can be engineered within a singular knit piece. So using two types of yarns all in one piece, but with the middle section, the lycra is not there. So you can see how on the body, there's room for play and movement. Similarly with this sample, so having a knit base with multiple long floats and then knitting in lycra in certain sections to then create volume and shape. And I guess I'm also looking at creating and building up imagery through layering the textiles on top of each other, and again looking at the balance and contrast between like transparency and opacity, and building up color almost like the way a oil painting might be. And again, printing using just a home inkjet printer and sublimation on the knitwear. I've also, in terms of like looking at how different structures could be created within knitwear, I was experimenting with using monofilament, as the property of monofilament tends to have this stiffness and it tends to curl. And so having the monofilament as a base and doing intarsia work on top of it and creating almost like a lightweight tulle-like fabrication, and this being the silhouette where this kind of technique would be applied. Also looking at different ways to incorporate imagery and print within knitwear, blending different types of yarns together to create like a different print effect. So this being a viscose and rayon blended together, it having a more mottled kind of effect.
Thank you, Lily.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. And then we have Madeleine Corbin from Cranbrook Academy of Art. Madeleine, you can please share your screen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for sharing these 5 minutes with me. This presentation will focus on a selection of my research about the origins and destinations of color and how both relate to the sustainability of our textile and dye industries. I'm a fiber artist and practitioner of performance, bookmaking, hiking, writing, and drawing, all as forms of research. My work is informed by the land, sea, and sky of my home in Oregon. The blue above this fire lookout is only a memory. For the past 2 weeks, the sky on the west coast of the US was as far from blue as it could be. the orange skies filled the land and the lungs of all beings with smoke and ash because of the catastrophic fires, a result of human-caused climate change. The weather is no longer small talk. Where does color come from? At first, this question may sound frivolous, but by asking where it comes from, perhaps I will learn where it is disappearing too. I've spent 6 years studying natural dyes and 4 years focusing on the imminent absence of blue. After my artist residency in a chemistry lab where I synthesized new inorganic pigments, I began to make my own botanical dyes. In 2016, I first noticed a cornflower growing a vivid blue. It reminded me of the blue I made in the lab, but instead of mixing an amalgam of rare earth materials at extreme temperatures, this blue grew from the soil all on its own. I later submerged cloth into a natural dye vat, saturated with blue cornflower petals. I was astonished when the protein and cellulose fibers appeared orange and green respectively. The absence of blue has since compelled my textile installations into the world of color, plants, and weaving. It is theorized that in the next 100 years, the blue of the swelling sea will noticeably begin to green, and the skies will continue to gray above cities. Will the pH-dependent blue found in flowers also disappear? What will it mean to suffer the loss of color? Last year, I set up an experiment with cornflowers and several water sources that varied in pH to investigate my questions. Cornflowers possess a copigmentation complex. They express their protocyanin dye between reddish orange and green depending on the pH of the dye solution. Instead of looking to the dye vat, I wanted to see if the color of the living plant would change as its water acidified. I watched the plants change day after day, a precious ability when there are many people like my father who are colorblind. In 1 month, the flowers began to bloom and the results were captivating. The blue in the cornflowers dissolved from purple to white as the water acidified. My project suggests that cornflowers may be indicators for the climate crisis, and, along with other pH-sensitive blues, they may indicate that the climate crisis is also a crisis of color. The challenge I set for myself was, and still is, to connect the poetics of color with the politics of absence to inspire sustainable action. This is urgent as the synthetic dye and textile industries are largely regulated by the EPA as hazardous waste generators. For my textile project, I studied the origins and destinations of color. I learned that blue is the only color completely absent from Homer's epic poems, and that blue is almost always introduced to language last across ancient texts from around the world. It seems no coincidence that it is also our shortest wavelength color, and that we have far fewer blue-sensitive cone cells in our eyes. I learned about Hexaplex trunculus, a mollusk that now produces purple instead of blue in our acidifying oceans, and I studied contemporary experiments in geoengineering to cool our planet by blasting a haze of particles into our sky to block the sun. I investigated the road salt in Detroit mined underneath the city and dyed blue, and I read about the economic relationship between woad and indigo. This color has rich layers to its story that stack slowly like wefts traversing an endless cloth. Today, color is becoming a limited resource. In December 2019, I received an email from Dharma Trading Co. explaining their inability to fill orders for cerulean and turquoise. While Dharma was left hoping, Pantone's color of the year was announced for 2020, classic blue. I will leave you with words that carry me forward into the hazy unknown distance. From Bluets, titled after cornflowers, Maggie Nelson writes, "The color of any planetary atmosphere, viewed against the black of space and illuminated by a sun-like star, will also be blue, in which case, blue is something of an ecstatic accident produced by void and fire." Thank you for listening to the ecstatic accidents that formed my ideas for my project.
Thank you, Madeleine. Now we have Maria Wolf Matternich from the Swedish School of Textiles Borås. Sorry about that.
Hi. Okay, my name is Maria. I'm very honored to be part of this event today. I graduated from the Swedish School of Textiles in Borås, and I did my master's in textile design focusing on knit. Now I'm going to present you my concept, comfort zones. A comfort zone is like a border we draw around us. We feel captured and safe. Comfort is elastic in material, physical way, as well as in emotions. Comfort is subjective. Comfort zones is a project in which physical and emotional comfort and discomfort is experienced by the human body. All three zones deal with a relationship between knitted filling material and cover. This concept embraces knit as a strong element that highlights the ability to create its own padding and volume in seating furniture. Inspired by the natural curling of the knit, a tube is rolled up. Volume builds up layer by layer. A torus appears and captures a void in the center of the form, required by the tube the fundament. The elasticity of the knit is challenged when creating volume and emphasizes the idea that comfort is elastic. Now I'm going to present you the first zone, the revealed relationships. All 7 modules were constructed by the rolling technique. The volume was built up layer by layer. No extra filling material was used. The revealed relationships offers the option of designing one's own comfort. A diversity of surfaces and shades of red form one collection of social elements. Round shapes emphasize the continuity of the circle, a continuous fabric, a continuity of rolling and elastic possibilities. The second comfort zone, the smooth void, is following the same principle of the first zones. The frame inside of the piece enables shape. The smooth void is placed on the floor and offers different angles of comfort. The lining of the woolen upper surface follows the shape and disappears into the void. It resembles a scallop. A few layers of 3D knitted spacer fabric are wrapped around the rodent frame. Layer by layer, the volume is built up. Then a couple layers of cotton lycra fabric tunnel are stretched over the base padding. All irregularities of the inner filling are smoothened out. The spacer fabric represents a decisive factor of the comfort and offers air's permeability and thermoregulation, as it introduces an alternative padding to PU foam. A strong relationship between shape and body appears. The body is captured, enveloped, encased, and enclosed. At the moment, I'm developing this prototype further to see how the concept can be translated into a functional lounger. Knitted garments strongly support the physical and emotional state and affect a coherent balance when being comfortable. The third zone, the shared solitude, explores the phenomena of sharing a comfort zone while still being in solitude. The tunnel offers 2 individual entrances on each end, which can be accessed by 2 bodies separately. Within this zone, the body functions as the filling. The distance between both bodies can be overcome if wanted, which introduces an important thought within especially this current time. Designing the end of something, belongs to the process of creating. Since the knit serves as both surface and filling material, here it is the sleeping bag and the mattress combined, a simpler recycling process, is then assumed. Especially now, home comfort and intimacy take a new approach as they gain value. Some like to share their comfort zone. What about you? Now I'm quickly going to use the last seconds to show you some of my models. You can see the big prototype of a lounge chair in my bag and the first small model. And this was actually the very first torus I started to create knitted shapes. So this is the torus and some of the spacer fabric. And one of the revealed relationships. You can see here. Yes, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Maria. And now we have Min Guan from KABK, Royal Academy of Arts, The Hague.
My work, graduation work from last year, Follies and Yet We Still Go On, is a modernized textile folly that functions as both interior product and a monument for what I define as domestic ruins. 1 second, please. So there are so many quiet and small abnormal events happen in everyday life in the city, like cracks, molds, scratches, building built and demolished. And when I look at these mundane small scale of traces of human life in the buildings, it brings me the same emotion as I was witnessing a historic ruins. For me, a ruin is not something of grandeur nor epic with a massive scale. Epic is something set up by the logic based on the political power game. I'm interested in more private emotional parts of ruin that represents people like me. So I started to define them as domestic ruins, and I started to make molds and casting from cracks in the building. And then the casting process reminded me of Follies, a fake newly built mimic of real ruins that was popular in landscape gardens in the 18th century Europe. So even if it's fake, it evokes fundamental human emotion, empathy to the beings that will decay, and the beauty of imperfection. Then I knew that I was going to make a Foley. So I liked tufting because a carpet has strong link with both interior architecture purpose. I also like that I can experiment a lot with the thickness of the yarns, and the way it able to create certain volume reminded me of a architectural materials. So in early stages, I made samples with concrete to make layers in between the textiles. But more I worked with tufting, I had fun with challenging myself, making textures with soft materials that mimics the broken surface of hard construction materials. So I made lots of samples with tufting experiments with also using different kinds of yarns such as cotton or recycled plastic yarns and wools and such, viscose. I also visited the construction sites often and grabbed what they were throwing away. And then I started to implement the tufting on them, also casting resins on them so I can play. It was very interesting for me to mix various kinds of yarns together. And also I was very lucky that my mom had the yarns that were about to thrown away from the bankrupt tapestry factory in Korea. So I also used them to enhance the work. And then I decided to work step by step to make a composition, like as if I was building a building. So I tufted the strips and then I cut them off and then started to recomposition them. So I made a flock print for the base, and then I slowly decided where to make empty and where to fill them, because I also wanted to show the underneath layer, which is the floor, to integrate with the work. So the end work result was a rather modular carpet that it can be assembled and deassembled, and it could react on its surroundings. I wanted the very last layer to be visible wherever it is installed. And then it also has the height differences. So not everything is entirely flat. That is also something that I see a lot in the domestic ruins that I witnessed. So these are the details of the works that I worked with. So as you can see here, this is a different exhibition site, but I also changed the composition of it. So it also reacts on the space differently. And at the end, I wanted people to get reminded again about their daily living surroundings as if they're looking at a behind of the scene. It's usually covered, but when it's ripped apart, you see the layers of raw materials that you don't realize that it was there. So it's about appreciation and awareness that I want to keep inside me as a textile designer as long as possible. That was my presentation. Thank you.
So we have now Päivi Laino from the Aalto University in Aalto University School of Art and Design and Architecture in Helsinki. So Päivi, if you want to share your screen, please.
Yes, I'm presenting my master's thesis collection in the Hanging Garden. It's a collection of textile sculptures, and it examines the fluctuating essence of gender identity. The sturdy, heavy masculine ropes are intertwined into a lace-like surface. I call this material heavy lace, and in a way, it suggests femininity is woven by masculinity. And material-wise, I chose to use plastic to underline the artificial structure of femininity. The material is made by sewing thin rope through a thicker one. I'm wondering on if femininity is only a mask created for women. The works represent the fears, anxieties, and expectations of a feminine creature.
Sorry, Päivi, are you sharing your screen? We can't see any, we only see you.
Yeah, I'm going to
okay.
say a little bit about the concept and then share a video.
Sure.
So the works represent the fears, anxieties, and expectations of a feminine creature, which are removed and hung up on the wall like empty masks. So now I'm gonna share a short video. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Päivi. So now we have Pallavi Padukone from Parsons, MFA Textiles Parsons School of Design.
Hi, yes, I will just share my screen. Hi everyone, I'm Pallavi and I will be speaking about my collection Reminiscent, integrating fragrance into textiles. The application of textiles is constantly evolving. I look at using textiles as a form of aromatherapy and a way to reimagine the fragrance industry and reconnect with nature. This piece on the right paved the way for my concept. It's a double weave with pockets of lavender and peppermint and made me think about how powerful the sense of smell truly is. It's a catalyst that can trigger intimate memories, a mood uplifter, and can create an illusion of time and place. This pandemic led me to introspect what are the fragrances that bring me a sense of comfort and remind me of home. I was inspired by the idea of creating interactive walls covered in textiles that are tactile, visual, and envelop you in your favorite scent, or using fragrance and textiles in spaces for healing and wellness. I chose 6 different fragrances that I associated with favorite memories, people, and emotions, and developed color palettes for each. It came down to jasmine, citronella, vetiver, rose, sandalwood, and clove. My material exploration led me to create a natural coating for cotton yarn with filtered beeswax, hardened with a tree-based resin, colored with natural pigments and essential oils for fragrance. The yarn is coated and cured in the medium and then for 24 to 48 hours before it is used on the textiles. The techniques that I found worked well with this yarn included braiding, embroidery, and weaving. This is the process for creating my jasmine piece, which involved hand setting the scented yarn and then machine stitching them in place. These are close-up details of the piece dyed with hibiscus, beetroot, indigo, and turmeric over organza silk, embellished with the fragrance of jasmine, the scent of weddings and Indian celebrations. I use natural dyes on pure silks and on the scented yarn, incorporating ingredients from my kitchen to help build my color palette. I layered silk organza dyed in earthy hues, embellished with the scent of sandalwood, a fragrance that reminds me of my grandmother. These are details of that particular piece. I made scented beads cast in a 3D print mold that I incorporated along with hand-spun recycled sari silk in my woven pieces. Here's a close-up of the beads in my vetiver embellished tapestry, as well as incorporated in hand-woven fabrics. And here is the scented yarn used as a supplementary weft, embellishing this textile with the fragrance of citronella, the scent that reminds me of my childhood and carefree days at summer camp. Here's another citronella piece incorporating recycled sari silk and cotton with the scented yarn. The coating allows for the flexibility of the yarn in the weave. Here they are scented with clove to create moldable fabric wrappings inspired by the Indian ritual of keeping cloves in cupboards to preserve silk saris and prevent moth and other pest infestations. Through these techniques, these textiles preserve certain intimate memories that embody the feeling of home. Scents are temporary and they fade. Over time, these fabrics will absorb new scents from around. Their colors will change when the natural pigments react to light, and the form and structure of the weaves will change when the yarn reacts to heat. What I find interesting is that the sensorial interaction with each textile will constantly evolve and find new meaning. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Pallavi. Now we have Pepe Wang from Royal College of Art in London. Pepe, if you can start sharing your screen. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Pepe. The project I'm going to present called We Plan. This is a sustainable project I did during my BA a few years ago. We Plan is a project designed for cyclability, The aim is to extend the lifespan of recycled plastics, namely the grocery bags. The project aimed to facilitate the recycling process by creating monomaterial textiles made of LDPE type of plastics. The project explores traditional spinning techniques to spin plastic bags into yarns to create sophisticated and strong woven fabrics that can be reused in new contexts. This fabric combines the structure of textiles with properties of plastics. The project started with concern about the environmental pollution caused by plastics. Inspired by TED's 10 sustainable strategy designed for cyclability, and also the documentary Plastic China shows the story behind recycling, which had shocked me. I realized how difficult the plastic recycling process is. The idea of transforming recycled plastics into yarns recycled plastics into yarns and fabrics is not new, but I found that recycling action most focused in PET bottles, which is more easily to be collected and recycled. Plastic bags may be difficult to recycle because they have limited markets and the cost of recycling is not directly proportional to the return. For these reasons, plastic bags are often burned or go to landfill. After this research, I realized the importance of designers to think about lifespan and recycling process of the product they create. And I start to think when we don't have facilities like large industries, what can individuals do to recycle plastic bags? The most challenging part of this project was to find a way to transform plastic bags into yarns that are suitable to weave. The common plastic made yarn we called plan is made by cutting the glossary bags into thin stripes, but this kind of yarn is still too thick to be neither warped and weft. To transform this plastic stripe into thinner yarns was challenging, as I don't have a spinning wheel and maybe most people don't. Then I have to try alternative tools I found at home, like hand mixer. After several experiments, I managed to create plans that I need for weaving by using drop spindle. Out-of-hand spun is time-consuming, but this making method can create very fine and strong yarn. These are the warps I made out of these yarns. Using drop spindle gives me a lot of freedom to create yarns with different thickness and density. I can even create fancy yarns using plastics. I would like to consider the yarn spun by recycled plastic bags as a new material. Apart from its sustainable benefit, it really has great and unique properties, such as lightweight, waterproof, resistance, durable, and flexible. These are woven samples I developed. I hope this project gives some new inspiration for plastic recycling. As a textile creative and maker, I want to use my practice to bring new functionality and aesthetic to recycled materials, and also to re-evaluate traditional textile techniques. Thank you.
Thank you, Pepe. Now we have Peter Salera from Parsons MFA Textiles. Peter, please share your screen.
So my name is Peter, and my project is entitled Bodily Covering for Somatic Releasement. So I'm going to kind of take you through the inspiration and process of the work. So the inspiration began kind of in two sort of sects of thought. I was interested in both working in a technological capacity and a conceptual capacity to make the piece. The piece was entirely made using Shima Seiki electronic knitting technology. which I work with some in my undergraduate education. I was interested in exploring it further in master's study to explore the shaping and structure capabilities of the machine and to explore those capabilities in making garments using minimal cutting and sewing techniques and minimal pieces to think about more circular economies. The conceptual inspiration for the piece was grounded in my larger master's thesis work, which was really about imagining future civilizations, and creating garments around what would be worn by those civilizations. So civilization of Imagine is called the object-oriented transcendentalists, which are a group of people that are grounded in releasing the body into an immaterial consciousness through somatic rituals. So my goal in this project was to kind of craft this garment that was there to explain and be worn for those imagined rituals of this society of people that is situated in a post-capitalist, post-Anthropocene future. So I began my research by looking at existing garments that highlight areas of the body, either for performance or aesthetic reasons. So I looked extensively at motorcycle wear, swimsuits, and then also contemporary fashion design like Alexander McQueen, as well as Balmain, Iris van Herpen, and the knitting work of Sandra Backlund to see how contemporary designers are exploring body geographies and then creating the garments with using those sort of principles in mind. So I began by sketching digitally and mapping different knit structures around the body, highlighting different muscle groups and exploring what it looks like when different areas of the body are highlighted or changed using intricate lace knit structures that the machine is capable of doing. So I began constructing the piece first by, I bought one of those like zip over suits that people wear on Halloween from Amazon. And then I began taping different areas of the body, exploring different muscle groups to see how energy might flow around the body and how I could map that using seaming or knit structures. And then I began by taping renderings of those knit structures onto the body. That led me to the creation of my first prototype, which was completed in August of 2019. Yeah, so over a year ago. It taught me a lot about what to do, what not to do, and this was made using a very heavy cut and sew process. And then really my goal for the final iteration was to minimize that completely and also integrate more intricacy into the structure. So I began by shifting materiality to working with a cotton cashmere blend yarn, and I was able to make the piece using more patterning capabilities on the machine. And these two images are screen grabs of the software where I programmed individual needle functions to create different structures of lace. So as you can see here, this is kind of the layout of the piece. It was made in 4 pieces. So the piece is knit entirely from the tip of the toe to the neck as one piece, shaping for the legs as well as the waist. And then it includes 2 glove sleeves and a hood that were then cut and sewn together with a central back zip closure to allow the wearer to get in and out. So yeah, these are final images of the piece. And I was really interested in creating something that would both exhibit and conceal the body and maintain the wearer having a sense of anonymity by the facial covering. There's a lot of intricacy programmed into the piece. There's over 30 unique knit structures of lace, which I used interspersed around the body to highlight different muscle groups and to really think about mapping energy flows that would be exhibited by the wearer as they're engaging in these imagined rituals. And these are kind of some shots of what a sort of speculative ritual of somatics and the civilization might be. Yeah, so just, yeah, I just wanted to thank as well UPW, which was the yarn sponsor that provided the yarn for the project, as well as this project was very technologically heavy. So I received a lot of mentorship from Gabby Asford, Sujin Kong, and Kate Phillips to make this piece over the 2-year period. So yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Now we have Radhaya Vesperos from Savannah College of Art and Design.
Hi, everyone. My name is Radhaya Vesperos Ponce, and I am an MFA candidate in fibers at the Savannah College of Art and Design. I am from the Philippines, and I lived in Doha, Qatar for 10 years, and I moved here in Savannah, Georgia 2 years ago. First of all, I wanted to say thank you for this incredible opportunity to present my work, and a huge congratulations to all my fellow finalists. I am honored to present to you my thesis entitled Unraveling a Kaleidoscope. This exploration honors matrilineal traditions such as sewing, mending, weaving, and washing, which is a response to feeling emotionally and culturally disconnected from my home and family as a result of migration. This body of work is a collection of hand-manipulated textiles, which are made from secondhand fabrics, collected as memorabilia from different places that I have lived in, and from people that I have met along the way. These fabric scraps were used as clothing, blankets, and accessories, which have been a part of many ordinary and significant moments in their lives. Facing the reality of living between cultures, I hope to materialize these experiences as a woman of color and to highlight the rich and diverse lives of migrant people of color. I have also included my own fabrics and incorporated some of my hand-woven textiles. Weaving for me is symbolic of the labor of love, of repetitive rhythms that can be meditative. This is my work entitled Amor. It is made from hand-woven textile scraps from the Philippines, where I was born, and hand-woven jacquard fabric. Spending hours weaving and sewing, I challenged the idea of women's labor, femininity, and crafting new identities. According to Solveig Goet, textiles are physical manifestations of connectedness. The tears of pain and happiness, the sweat of anxiety and excitement, both part of the self and absorbed by the cloth. Interwoven strands, loose ends, unraveling threads are all embedded in the fabrics of our life. This is my work entitled Influx. Using fabric scraps evoke a continuation of these materials that would have been discarded. I consider cloth as vessels of memory and are silent witnesses in our daily lives. As I seek healing from feelings of longing and nostalgia, I approach making as a form of mindful inquiry and a way to slow down. As a maker, the tools I work with are evocative objects that are symbolic. Sherry Turkle writes that we think with the objects that we love, and we love the objects that we think with. The sewing machine symbolizes the home and the generations of women in my family who have worked with them. Glenn Adamson says that cutting is a decisive moment, usually irreversible. In my work, I try to push the material to do what it's not meant to do, and that is my way of communicating the idea of change. Washing symbolizes cleansing. Water is considered the element of the unconscious and associated with intuition and emotion. One of the very first people who donated fabrics to me was my mother-in-law. She is legally blind, and she is the type of person who loves texture. She sees the world through touch. And that inspired me to think about a different way of seeing, and it influenced a new perspective of making and textile thinking. Penina Barnett wrote that touch is always to be touched. And I think that there is something so profound about this way of thinking, and often a visceral experience that cloth embodies. I think about textiles as something that can materialize the voices in my head, some of the unraveling questions, and things that are hard to verbalize. My hope is that the work serves as a reminder to bring us closer to the world, to the fabrics that give us comfort, to be more mindful, and most of all, to highlight the diverse and colorful lives of people around us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Radea. Now we have Romy Kaiser from Swedish School of Textiles, Borås.
So I'm Romy. I'm a biotech material designer and a textile thinker, and I just graduated from the Swedish School of Textiles in June. And I'm very delighted to present to you my master project today, Keraplast. And in a nutshell, Keraplast is a stiff, biodegradable and renewable material out of human hair, which is created in a combination of traditional textile techniques with a thermocompression molding approach. And before I want to show you the results, I want to share a little bit about the material story and the inspiration and the Keraplast process. So materiality plays a crucial role in the daily life of our Western society. Also, as the prognosis of a further rising population is up to 11 billion people around 2100, also the pressure on our current living and consumption system grows. And I was very intrigued by these parallel courses, and I was wondering, how can the human being contribute to these renewable resources? So I was realizing that actually hair is growing quite fast, and it sums up to our, like in our whole lifespan, to 1,000 kilometers, which actually results to 7 million kilogram waste per annum per year. So I was wondering if there is something we could do about it, but in history we actually also reused hair, and we also created with it. But in today's Western society, our lives are guided by many preformed norms and established as ethical standards that stop our self-perception as being part of the world of nature. So if we aim for living in a circularity in the future, it is time to rethink our systems with a new mindset. And therefore, I wanted to challenge the systems and create something, a usable material out of human hair. So I made a lot of experiments, and basically in the experiments, I came up with a process which looked like this. I went to the hairdressers and asked if I can have the hair waste, which are fibers around 3 centimeters to 10 to 15 centimeters, and tried to create with it. So I washed it, I tried to dye it. I personally found very good actually to have the textile techniques, because these really help to control and to get hold of the material, as well as to create with it and have a control over a pattern. So as you can see here, I was using a knitting machine with the longer hair fibers, and I was working on a small mini hand loom with the short hair fibers. And there I also was able to structure and create with it. Also, I tried to implement a 3D surface as textile quality, as structure and repetition. I was working together with the chemistry lab, or the polymer lab in our university. And I was using the thermocompression machine. So I pressed it with a lot of heat. No, actually not a lot of heat, but more pressure. So it was a lot of pressure. And so the knitted or woven or non-woven textile piece was pressed in the machine, which then actually created more stiff material. You can see here that the water kind of acts as a plasticizer, so it fused together even without any additional binder. Here you can see very well that every single fiber kind of glued together. And this resulted in a very shiny and stiff material. This, for example, is a woven one. You can also see the natural colors. So it's dark, middle brown, and blonde hair, which I laid in stripes while weaving. And the warp is still in there. So now I want to show you some further pictures, and I go back to my presentation. So this resulted in various samples, as you can see here in the back. These are woven ones where I removed the warp thread against light. The blonde hair actually also gets translucent, which is quite interesting to see. The front is wool, and it's a knitted piece, because of course with knit you need any additional
Thank you, Romy. The time is
okay, then I just flip through. That's the last pieces, and if you want to have more information, then you always feel welcome on the webpage. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Romy. Now we have Sabrina Kinderwater from the Fine Arts Center in Greenville, South Carolina.
My name is Sabrina Kinderwater, and I'll be presenting my textile piece titled "How Are You Today?" from my time at the Fine Arts Center, which is a fine arts high school in Greenville, South Carolina. This work is a machine-sewn black linen fabric book It is filled with pages made of a linen fabric base with layers of various types of both manufactured and hand-dyed fabrics using chaboy techniques. The book is held together with a thin ribbon that runs through each page. The book format gives the viewer access to both sides of each page. The work is an exploration of personal experiences through textile collage. It is a type of visual diary that holds many characteristics of my life, specific events or times, and repeated circumstances or happenings. The books of connection between forms, symbolic of the very undefined, vague beginnings of the community and relationships that get built throughout life. So the book begins with a completely abstract composition with vague semblance of connection between forms, symbolic of the very undefined, vague beginnings of the community and relationships that get built throughout life. In the next 3 pages, I move into simple embroidered figures interacting with one another on backgrounds of haphazard, colorful fabric scraps, layered with many different skewed stitches through hand embroidery or very quick machine sewing. These are juvenile compositions symbolic of the more representative, but still very ambiguous beginnings of a community. They show the very basic impressions you have of the people around you and the simple nature of new relationships. In the remaining pages, I have moved to screen printed figures connected with simple running stitches. Screen printing allowed for the accumulation of a set of characters that make up a more definite and well-established community and become representative of a specific person, an action that people do, or a type of feeling that comes up repeatedly in my life. These more detailed figures also allude to deeper understanding of those elements, as well as stronger, more clear relationships. The running stitches emphasize the interaction and relation between these characters. Though I have captured moments from my life in each page, and they are all representative of very specific times for me, I used collage to present abstracted, more vague versions of these intimate stories, to give the viewer insight into my personal life in a very limited way so they don't see specific details. They're able to apply their own narratives and views of these scenes to my piece based on their own experiences. I kept the pages quite loose and a bit messy, like the handwriting of a written diary. I also wanted to give the viewer access to the backside of each page as a way to view the remnants of each composition. These stitches become essentially an imprint or simplified transcript of each moment. This is representative of the more vague memories of experiences or time periods, which remain a permanent part of you after the specific occurrence. I made the outside of the book a solid black as representation of the often subdued and restrained nature of people in public interaction, which gives little indication of who they truly are. I myself am usually very reserved and quiet, as the cover implies, but with a loud plethora of information within, as shown through the very active and colorful pages. And I think in general, we see many people as simply flat singular colors, unaware of the many stories that they hold. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. Now we have Saloni Jain from the National Institute of Fashion Technology in Calcutta in India. Saloni, you're welcome to share.
Hello, yes ma'am, I'm here. I'm gonna share my screen. Good morning everyone. My name is Saloni Jain. Hope you all are doing fine and are safe at home. So my project here is titled Arogya Pat. Arogya Pat in Arogya in Sanskrit means meditative and Pat means cloth. So during this present situation of pandemic COVID-19, it is really important for people's well-being and to take care of their health and immunity. Since no vaccine has been discovered to cure the effect of the virus and people are going out to work, it is very necessary to protect oneself from falling sick and getting weak. Therefore, my design concept here is to develop a kind of fabric which helps in improving the immunity of a person by giving them some level of protection from falling sick from even a normal bacteria or a flu. My idea is to use herbal medicinal plants and their benefits by dyeing and covering to create a wearable piece or a wearable textile, which helps not only as a protection, but also wearing it will develop a good aroma on the skin, and one can notice and feel immunity being created in the body. The fiber of the material used to develop the fabric is obtained from the bast of a plant, Crocus alotus, also known as jute, found a lot in eastern parts of India. It is composed primarily of plant material, cellulose, and linen. This fiber is long, soft, shiny, and can be spun into coarser and denser both. It has strength, it's long-lasting, and also is biodegradable. After the extraction of the fiber, they are converted into the yarns and are spinned. The plants used to dye, these are the medicinal plants used to dye. These medicinal plants have a lot of anti-inflammatory and antibacterial qualities as mentioned in the screen. First of the material or the plant or herb is neem. And then the second one, which neem also has the most amount of health benefits as mentioned in our history as well, and followed by turmeric and peppermint. Then the yarn is dyed with the neem solution and other herbal dyes, peppermint and haldi, also known as haldi, jute yarns. And then the woven structure is created. This textile is made at home, keeping in mind the current situation of the current COVID-19 situation and the limited resources available. The main working textile which the people can wear while they are going out to work, as it is very risky to go out right now, will be a very fine thread, very fine yarns, which will be processed. I could not do it because I was at home. Next, there can be an alternative for the hospitals as well, as the jute is a wearable fabric and normal people can wear it, but the people in the hospitals are already suffering from a problem. Therefore, we can take 100% cotton fabric, which is 100% cotton fabric can be used as it is a breathing fabric and favorable for healthcare applications requiring skin contact. It is also said to be the most suitable raw material, forming the basis of shells and for the dust-made solution. Here we can change the process a little. The fabric is dyed with the medicinal plants, leaving the neem because it has the highest amount of antibacterial qualities. And after the dyeing, all the materials can be soaked in the neem solution separately 3 times in the solution. After 60 minutes of the fabric, it can be taken out and kept under the sun to dry. After dyeing, the fabric is dipped in the solution again. This cycle repeats 3 times to get the most benefit of the solution to the textile and gain the longer period of time. As we all know, the bed sheets in the hospitals are changed frequently after every day for the patients of COVID-19. So the amount of the dye done for the fabric after the washing will not suddenly reduce to 0. After the medicinal treatment, the above.
Thank you, Saloni. You have to wrap it up.
Okay. So all the chosen, these are the 4 types of the bedding collection. All the chosen dyes, including neem coating, this textile product is planned to be made with a lot of health benefits, as it's used to depend on the theory of the touch in the COVID-19 situation for the patients and also for the workers in the hospitals. Human body naturally heals itself when sleeping and or meditating. The therapeutic fabric, when stays in the contact with the skin, passes to the body its medicinal merits. Thus, when the body is at rest, the clothing will work most efficiently. It will help our body to stand against the harmful toxins and germs about the. And I would like to conclude by this home experimental textile will be more beneficial to be used during this time of the pandemic, as is the requirement of the hour, and the research is all done at home with the limited available materials. Thank you so much. Hope you all, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Salome. Now we have Snetek from Royal College of Art, London. Snetek, if you would like to start sharing your screen, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Snetek and I'm calling from London. Nice to meet you all, and thanks for having me today to talk about my soft vessel. The project is a series of self-standing and adaptable knitted forms and engineered fabric. 2 years of my MA in the Royal College of Art allowed me to partake in multiple interdisciplinary projects. I received the notion that the main expectation of textiles stays in providing a cover or soft touch onto hard materials. Textiles could be anything. However, the repetition of design application of textiles only as covering or softening agents creates a realm of preconception that the textile itself is incomplete or insufficient without hard components. I began to ponder what an incarnation of natural strength and ability of knitted textiles is. The project aims to focus on the essence qualities of knitted textiles and subsequent self-reliant three-dimensional forms derived from these qualities. Collectively, soft vessels hold a personal narrative as well. My father, a South Korean born in the 1950s, used to share a story with me about how his mother evacuated herself and 4 young children from the communist regime in North Korea. She wrapped valuables in fabric, made into bundles, and carried them over 1,000 kilometers. These bundles were their trunks, safes, chairs, pillows, and a primitive form of soft modularity. Conventional home products often becomes the most significant burden for moving and storage due to fragility and inflexibility. The journey for adaptable and flexible products that reflects nomadic lifestyle became a seed of this project. What I wanted to capture is a hybridity of dichotomy, Asian and Western cultures, soft and hard, technical and narrative, and high technology, yet organic handmade aesthetic. Materiality doesn't provide a sense of belonging, but it is healthy to own objects that help people feel grounded. These soft, customizable, and multifunctional items are a personal reflection of materials and home, perhaps a piece of my DNA, but surely a message of possibilities. I believe that we don't need many things, but rather right things. My scope of sustainability comes from creating last pieces in low impact materials that are not stuck in one shape or size. I aspire my future steps to be as flexible and expandable as soft vessel, and I want soft vessel to evoke curiosity, new potentials, and furthermore, a meaningful and personal ownership between people and objects.
Thank you, Snetak. And now we have Trine Tornhjelm Pedersen from the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts School.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Trine, and thank you so much all for your interest in my project. I'll just share my screen. You see it now?
Yes, we see it, and it's full screen. Thank you, Trine.
Thank you. Okay, so here you see 3 textiles from my project, woodblock print and digital processes. The one in the middle is woodblock printed and the other 2 are digital printed. The project is a tribute to the textile craftsmanship, and as a textile designer, I'm very enthusiastic about the analog print and its aesthetic values. The aesthetics found in the old analog printing method, woodblock print, is unique and cannot be found elsewhere. But the printing method is limiting in many ways. It is therefore relevant to investigate how the potential of this old printing method can be used in a contemporary but also commercial context. In this project, I've used digital processes to re-establish and reinvent the old woodblock printing method. CNC routers has given me the opportunity to make wooden blocks for printing, and the digital print adds opportunities in terms of color, scale, and production. I believe that combining the textile tradition with technology can add a lot of value for printed textiles. I therefore investigated how I can bring these aesthetic values found in the analog woodblock print into digital printed textiles, and thereby give the textiles a commercial as well as aesthetic potential. My process has been an interaction between hands-on analog experiments and analytical work, searching for this particular value that I believe is so special for the woodblock printing method. This has been an absolutely important process due to the close relation between the aesthetics outcome and the printing method. It has been very rewarding analyzing and documenting my findings, learning a method from scratch and having to reinvent part of the printing process. Researching on printing methods, I've discovered differences and similarities between the oldest method, that is woodblock printing, and the latest method, digital printing. I've used these insights as foundation for my concept. Historically, the revealing of the repeat created by the wooden block has been one of the biggest weaknesses for woodblock printing. And in an attempt to turn this attribute into an advantage, I've emphasized the grid and the meeting of the blocks. Neither woodblock print or digital print have the ability to imbue the fabric with color. This creates a distinctive and unwanted backside. I've been inspired by the ceramic artist Bodil Mans, and I've worked actively with this attribute, printing the textiles on both sides. Common for woodblock print and digital printing is also the flexibility found within the methods, both in terms of aesthetic and production. The repetition is flexible, making it possible to create different expressions with the same element. The flexibility also adds a sustainable advantage in the production, making it possible to print the side that is needed, leaving no waste. And now I want to show you a small video. This video illustrates how the textiles interact with the light and how the experience of the textile changes during the day when the intensity and color of the daylight changes. When the light hits the textile, the ornamentation of each side interact with each other and creates a sensual experience in which a contrast occurs between the saturated print and the more blurry print revealing itself from the opposite side. The interaction of the 2 patterns also creates a new type of overprint, mixing the colors from the 2 sides. This interaction is unique for the digital print, which normally does not have the benefit of creating new colors in the mixture of several prints. I've used this technique as one of the many ways to give the digital print an analog value. Thank you all. That was all for me.
Thank you, Trine. And then we have the last one today is Yi Xuan from Parsons MFA Textiles. Yi Xuan, you can start sharing your screen, please.
My name is Yishan, and I'm from Parsons MFA Textiles program. I focus on utilizing agar as a textile material and exploring between digital, bio, and the recycling fabrication with agar. So coming to textile program with the background in fashion design, I brought in the question with me of how can we prevent using petrochemicals and create a healthier material system. So I learned about the potential of using agar to create biopolymer, which can possibly replace many plastic products. It's a simple formula: agar, glycerin, water, and the dyes. And the agar as a gel is extracted from two main types of seaweed, especially Gracilaria. But when we talk about using seaweed nowadays, there's also some concerns of the impact of overusing the natural resources. However, the truth that I found out is 90% of the seaweeds that's on the market are actually commercially cultivated. And the Gracilaria is the world's most cultivated seaweed, and the 70% of them are from China. So I actually honestly find it hard to source in agar in New York because most of them are from Asia. But the reason for me to continue doing this research was because when I was looking at the history of Gracilaria in where I'm from, which is Taiwan, I realized it's the first place to ever successfully cultivate the seaweed in 1960s. It has the environmental and the technological advantages to cultivate this seaweed, but for some reason, the industry shrinked to almost none in 2002 because it's just moved to some other places that's cheaper. So I see this as a chance to show people new potentials of what this material can do, and at least bring in new values to the cultivation of this seaweed in my homeland, and possibly to other parts of the world as well. And so different proportion, different ingredients give this material totally different look. I also try to mix it with leftover walls for an interior tiles project, which actually aids insulation properties to agar. And I also explore different interlocking systems for better assembly efficiencies. So all tiles. And since it's something that needs to be done in the kitchen, I started it without second thoughts to color them with food waste and created a wide color range like this. And for me, agar can also be considered as a natural binder that glues materials together. So for this piece, I glued all the food waste together. And I also experimented with some mineral dyes, which is mica powder. It gives this material another layer of shine. So I created this interlocking system for making sequin-like fabric. It can be fashioned into many different forms. And when it comes to textiles, we can never forget about yarns and the weaving. So I also made yarns out of agar to create different woven and braided patterns like this. And so for me, this project is not just about a research into a material. It's also about what's the best system for utilizing this material to fabricate, how to fabricate, and what is the most efficient thing to fabricate. So how do we understand its personality and develop it into a smart making system is very important to me. So I started to play around with how it shrinks during dehydration and thinking, oh, this material is actually, it can make very beautiful plants. So I created a mold making system using 3D modeling and 3D printing technology. And I call this process biosculpture. So you can get all this lively parts by biosculpture with the 3D printed mold. So I make different parts and then I put them together. I braid different types of flowers. And when you look at the fall flower industry nowadays, most of them are either made from plastic or it's a combination of various materials. But with agar, we can slightly adjust the recipe to make the whole out of agar, which make it 100% biodegradable. So as a textile maker, I always questions about what makes a textile. Is it about the surface, yarns, or can it be units that make up textiles, like how Legos construct surfaces and even objects? So I created circular yarns that could be linked together and then can also link with the flowers that I made. Then I use them to create surfaces and objects, lamps, and handbags. I also use it to repurpose some old lamps that looks very torn. And
thank you, Yushan.
Okay, it can be anything between body and spaces. And just a quick review of the variety of things that I can do with agar. Also, so to conclude, I explore the relationship between human and the nature, and how do we bring in nature to our environment with more natural ways? How do we create underlies nature's creation? So I resolve to innovate, co-create, consume, recycle, and repurpose and discard materials with awareness as a textile maker, designer, and a researcher. This is my story. Thank you for your attention. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Yishuan. So now everybody have done their presentations, and I would like offer lead to maybe you want to say something at the end, Lee, before we say goodbye to those talented finalists. You're muted, Lee. You need to unmute yourself. I'll unmute you. Yeah.
It has been a very moving afternoon. It's quite interesting to see that more and more young designers see textile as a healing agent, and that the planet and the people are definitely more present in all presentations. And that, of course, COVID has completely put almost like a magnifying glass on this situation. I'm in the middle of making the New York Textile Months magazine, which is dedicated to all the whole generation of the lost generation of 2020. They didn't have a real graduation. They didn't have a party. They could not, jump for joy. They didn't have an exhibition in many cases. So we decided to dedicate the whole issue on young talent. And so I'm scrutinizing work, many of the works we've seen today, but 10 times more. It's going to be the same fat issue. And I'm really struck by the positivity, the hope, coupled with melancholia for some things lost. But there is this dynamic and there is this quest for slowness and sorrowness and empathy. So what you see in this generation is the absolute promise of an other and better world. And that is quite exceptional. Some of the processes we've seen in the past already building, but now it seems to come to a sort of fruition, I don't know how to say that. It comes to in focus, let's say, and I think this is a beautiful beginning of a new age.
Thank you, Lee. And I know that Philip Fimmano also wants to say a few words. Philip.
Well, Lee basically, I think, rounded everything up very beautifully. But I just wanted to thank all the finalists yet again. I know that they've all stayed on to hear each other, which I think is a good sign how they're all supporting one another, and that this industry of textile making is really a very humanistic one, and that's why we all love it so much, especially at this time. I did want to ask all of the finalists before they log off to remember that the prize is going to be announced at 2:15 New York time on September 30. This is the day of the Talking Textiles Conference, which is free for all students around the world and faculty. So I'd like to ask each of the 20 of you to become ambassadors for the conference just for 1 week and spread the word to as many students and faculty as you know. Share it with your fellow students, share the links with anybody else who's enrolled. All you need is to have an email address from a school. So we will send you all the link, or Ragnar will send you all the link. And if you could please just make sure that as many people as possible are attending our conference. It's really a full day of amazing speakers. And this year our theme is all about the archaeology of textiles, which is going to show us how textile making and textile techniques from prehistory and from ancient history are actually able to inspire the making of the future. And we have both historical and contemporary designers speaking. And it's going to be an amazing day. So at 2:15, that's 8:15 p.m. European time, a little bit later in India. And that's when Royce and I will be announcing the winner of the prize and maybe some special mentions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip. So now I would like to thank all the finalists to be here with us today and to do your presentations. This was so interesting. And you can actually log off now and the jury will stay for a little time. So thank you. If you have any questions, send me an email, and me or Nina, who you have been in touch with, she is here with us today. You have the email talkingtextiles@edelkoort.com, or contact me. So we look forward to see more of your work in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jury, I wanna, everybody. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you have to put all the cameras on so we can see your faces before you leave. That would be great. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you all.
And we apologize that there wasn't enough time to give you each critiques and feedback, but we hope you understand it's because of the time zone that we have to get everybody around the world in a short amount of time so everyone's awake. So that's the only reason we couldn't do that.
Great.
It won't let me put my camera on, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Abigail, and everybody
Thank
else.
you so much for this opportunity. And see you guys. Be safe.
So you will receive email from us also about the recording and the next steps. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Also thank you from my side. Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Continue.
Okay, just thank you from my side. It was an amazing opportunity, and it was so nice to listen to all of you guys. And so sorry again for the technical issues.
No.
I'm very curious. So thanks again.